Joan said, "As my wife and I were playing an early round of golf, we listened to a broadcast, the 85th episode of Coffee with the Commissioner. And I have to say, I couldn't do anything but applaud Jeff Bergosh for his competence, honesty, and intellectual charity. He was extremely gracious to Stephen Brendtro, but questioned, in a sense, the notion that he's marketing We Are Perdido. If you did a compatibility study in your community and told them that it only takes a simple majority, 50% plus one, to pass a proposition that creates another layer of government, creates another layer of taxes and or fees, and blah blah blah, then what would they say?" Tipton, the director of the Florida League of Cities FLC University program, said, "I can tell you that no government is free. All government costs something. And when it comes to this type of incorporating," she said, "you're actually acting to create a new local government in the state of Florida." Ron Paul stated, "Personal liberty is the purpose of government, to protect liberty, not to run your personal life, not to run the economy, and not to pretend that we can tell the world how they ought to live." Enjoy the conversation.
Tell us about We Are Perdido. How did this all start?
Well, okay, so this actually started at your meeting at the District 1 Town Hall meeting that we had last fall.
Mm-hmm.
That you hosted. I attended as just a local resident and sat and listened and took notes. I was interested. I had never been to a county commissioner meeting or any of these kinds of things before, so that was all new to me. And as I was listening to all these issues come up, it just kind of dawned on me. I said, these sound like they're very local issues that don't really affect a lot of other people further up in the county. I mean, it's probably the last thing. Perdido's the last thing on Century's mind. I know that, and most of the residents who were bringing them up all seem to know, well, how to deal with them and what really should happen. It's just that they didn't have a whole lot of power to do anything other than to just bring them up to the county and say, hey, this is an issue. And then as big as the county is, it's a fight for attention a lot of times, because I mean, to be honest, you'll like this. I pulled up this statistic. So there's 320,000 people in the county, roughly. Mm-hmm. 267,000 of those are in unincorporated county.
Right.
And so the county is actually doing its normal county functions for the whole 320,000, but for those 250,000, it's doing local government functions, which a city or a town municipality would usually do. So by that regard, this is a fun fact, that would make that unincorporated area would be similar in population to the 5th largest municipality in Florida.
Absolutely. Steve, you may not be aware of this, but there was a very, very big push about 3 years ago from some folks that live downtown. I'll just use that terminology. And they really, really badly wanted the entire county to be incorporated with the city and one just gigantic city like
Miami-Dade.
Well, like Duval County, like Jacksonville, Duval. And fortunately, that didn't go very far, because people saw that a mile away. And so, yeah, there are folks that, and on top of that, they wanted to really eliminate the district system and have one strong elected county administrator to run the whole deal. And I think that was a big turnoff. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. It's interesting stuff. And the challenge in that is that you have pockets of communities that have very different priorities and very different needs. So absolutely, what Warrington needs is not what Cantonment needs. What Molino needs is not what Perdido needs. Same Beulah, and pick any spot. And there are these communities that really have a sense of identity, and are fairly close-knit, smaller populations that have their set of local issues that they're concerned about, and they end up having to be dealt with at this larger level. And so one of my favorite books, I'll throw this out here real quick, is by Warren Berger. It's called A More Beautiful Question.
Wait, and Supreme Court Justice?
I don't know. I didn't pay attention to who he was. I just read the book. But it is one of my favorite books. Warren Berger, A More Beautiful Question. And what he went through is a study of how we stop asking questions when we turn about 5 years old and go to kindergarten. because we're told to sit down, shut up, memorize, repeat, all that.
Right, I remember.
But we lose that power of inquiry, which sparks great ideas. And so he kind of goes through this and gets you thinking like, oh, I can start asking questions and find a more better question. And you ask one question, leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to a more beautiful question, which is like the ultimate question. So as I'm sitting through that meeting and talking to residents afterwards, I started to go through kind of a list of questions. I was like, why is this happening? What are these issues all about? How do they normally get handled? How are they handled other places in Florida? And one of the super interesting questions that came up during that town hall meeting was actually posed a couple times by residents. Have we thought of becoming a town? And it was an intriguing idea. And as a country kid from South Dakota, my first thought is, yeah, well, towns have a lot more taxes. They have a lot more, it's another layer of government, all this stuff. So I just kept researching. I'm almost a professional researcher by trade because of my background. I have to learn new technologies every day. So I started to dig into these things and found that there was a model of municipal government called government light that's been used successfully in other parts of Florida. Mm-hmm. And the idea is not to recreate the whole thing as, a brand new police force, brand new fire department, EMS, all that kind of stuff, and all the services. It actually does what about 50% of Florida cities do, is contract out a majority of the services to the county. Right. And then just focuses on a couple core things that it wants to address locally as those main local issues. So,
well, that's a perfect segue into one of the first questions I have for you. These are the questions we talked about a little bit before we started. So, and this is again, and just for everyone's awareness, this is an area of District 1. It's an area of the south western portion of the county is a study area. I want to say about 23,000. Is that right?
23,100, something like that.
And so I don't live down there, but it's part of my district, but I don't own property or a business there. So I'm very neutral on this. And I want to, and I've told Stephen that I went to his meeting down at Liberty Church, and I've been following the progress of it, but I want people to know you're not going to see me put my thumb on the scale. But I told him I'm going to ask some difficult questions. I'm going to pass along some questions that I've heard. One of the biggest questions that I've heard, Stephen, and maybe you can help clear this up, is what specific problem is incorporation going to answer? Because my understanding from going to your meeting and looking at your website is the roads are going to remain county roads, and most of them are state roads, Sorrento Road, Perdido Key. So you're not going to have the roads. The zoning is going to remain the county zoning, and the zoning staff is going to remain the same. The school board is still going to run the same schools. My understanding is you're not going to have your own fire department or police force like the city of Pensacola does. The parks are going to remain county property unless you purchase them from us. And what specific problem is this incorporation going to solve?
So the specific, I could list, a bunch of issues that came up at that district town hall, meeting but at the end of the day, the county could address all those. Sure. It's, the county's working on that. They're spread a little thin, in some areas like stormwater management, the ponds, all that kind of stuff, park management, the budget for maintaining the parks. And you have interesting issues like the Perdido Kids Park. You can't spend lost dollars on it because it wasn't a lost funded park, as I understand it, right? So there's a lot of different challenges at the county level, and these local issues that are coming up could be addressed by the county, but they could also be addressed by a municipality, by locally elected officials to work through some of the issues. And you're correct that there's a lot of things like the parks, the beaches, Perdido Key Drive, things like that would likely remain the county. The state roads are going to remain the state roads, but it puts the local residents in a different position for a different conversation, because right now the local voice is 3 minutes each at a Board of County Commissioner meeting, you know, where you guys are super busy, you're getting texted while things are going on, you know, there's all sorts of distractions.
A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody's talking and 3 other people are texting you. So that local voice then becomes locally elected officials who actually are citizens of the area, who see all these issues anyways. And so it doesn't take an explanation. It just takes a citizen saying, hey, you know that pothole I was talking about? And they're like, oh yeah, I drove over it this morning. It'll get fixed. But those conversations then are happening between a municipal government and the county government, or the municipal government and the state government, or you know, Fish and Wildlife, or wherever it is. It's a much different conversation than just one or a few local citizens trying to address a problem. And I will point out too, with the roads, the ownership of the roads is not a decision that happens in the feasibility study as we're going through this process in proposing this. That decision is an intergovernmental decision that would happen with the first elected town leaders that would sit down and they would say, hey, you know what? We don't want to own Perdido Key Drive. That's way too much to maintain.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah. Try to give it away here and do this. No way, kid, you bother me. But there's other roads around that are more local streets that certainly could be managed. And at that point, the negotiation of road ownership goes hand in hand with the gas tax revenues and things like that that actually help pay for the infrastructure. So
and that's a perfect segue, because we're going to talk about revenue, and I hate it because, man, this hour goes by so quick. And I want to I want to keep a lot of time, because this is a fascinating topic, and I want to tell all the folks that are putting questions in here toward the end, and about the last 5 minutes, I'm going to do a lightning round with Steve, because there are a lot of questions for you, Steve. But I think as we go, I'll probably ask questions that will allow you to answer a lot of these questions from the citizens who are watching. But just general stepping back, like I said, I attended your meeting at Liberty Church when Lynn Tipton from the Florida League of Cities was there.
She's amazing. She
is amazing, very impressive. And it really begged a lot of questions. I took copious notes, and then I spoke with her for about an hour and a half the next day. And I really brought myself up to speed with some of the requirements. So let's talk about funding, because a lot of folks, and I'm getting this expressed to me on these comments, they're concerned about two things: taxes going up and additional layers of bureaucracy. And I'm a small government Republican. I'm not one of these guys who was a Democrat all his life and then decided to become a Republican in the early 2000s when the wind changed. At age 18, I knew I loved Ronald Reagan. I've been a Republican, small government Republican my whole life. So, you know, reflexively, it concerns me when you've got another layer of bureaucracy. So how do you answer that question? You know, the concern that people are like, my taxes are going to go up and I'm going to have another layer of red tape to deal with. How do you answer that?
So the government light model does it in two ways. So first of all, it's structuring the charter of the municipality and structuring the government to be smaller and more nimble. So in the charter, there's fewer employees, and they're a typical government-like municipality can operate on 5 to a dozen city employees, which is very different than a full-service local government like the county or you know, Pensacola. In doing so, you reduce a whole lot of things. You reduce the expenses for your employees, for one thing. You reduce by reducing the number of employees, you also reduce some of that bureaucracy, the red tape that you have to get through to get things done. Biggest thing though, one of the big things that you reduce is legacy costs, which eat cities and local governments alive. So legacy costs are retirement, you know, pensions, all that kind of things. If you have 1,000 employees, how many of those retired employees are alive at one point, and you have to keep paying in pensions? Well, with government lifestyle cities, like for instance, Weston, Florida has, I think it's 10 employees for 70,000 people, they don't have to worry about those legacy costs as much because their legacy costs will never really grow beyond those 10.
But Steve, now again, like I told you, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. You don't get to sidestep the costs; you just pay them a different way. So you only have 10 employees, but you're outsourcing your fire, you're outsourcing your zoning, you're outsourcing your school districts, and those people are getting the Florida retirement system. So you're just paying a higher cost in your contract.
Well,
not really
so let me ask this. So what does the Perdido community currently pay for fire service, for our current level of fire service and sheriff service?
Well, the county we're paying about 25 million, is the 25 to 26 million.
Right.
And the sheriff is about 85 million this year. And then you divide that by the person, by the number of citizens, and you can come to that figure.
Right. So, well, if you actually understand that, and you get this, that funding comes out of the ad valorem taxes that the county already levies on that area. And those functions, the EMS, the sheriff, those are largely constitutional functions. So whether or not, if we want to add a layer of police force on top and have our own police force, you still would have the county. What we're saying is, instead of having our own police force, we just use the counties, which is, pass through. And that's the model that government pursues. And then on top of that, if there's service delivery issues, like with staging, or you want to bump up service in a certain area, as a government entity or government administration, you're managing those contracts locally, and you can adjust those service levels up to the level that you need and ensure that you have the right people in the right place. And then you're only paying the delta. You're not paying the whole thing. You're paying the delta to get that extra service level above and beyond whatever the county is already constitutionally providing.
No, and that's a good point that you make, because look, this as well as I do. There's no free lunch, right? Someone always pays. It might be free to you, but someone's paying for it. The concern that I have, representing that portion of the county, the whole, actually, anyone from any part of the county can call me anytime. I get them all the time, but that's the area that elects me. And a lot of folks are under the mistaken impression that if they incorporate the 23,000 and they get to pull off, that they can take their portion of their tax bill that they're paying to the county now, and they can all give that to the city. I got to disabuse everyone who thinks of that notion. That's incorrect. That's why I've said, look, if these guys are successful, let me finish the point. If these guys are successful, it actually makes my job easier, because that's an additional layer of people that are helping to take care of the roads if they decide to take them. So the people got to understand, if you want something extra, you got to pay extra. The 6.61 mills, that's not going away. You're still, if you incorporate, that money is still coming to the county. The school board's still going to get their money. The sheriff's MSTU is still going to happen, and the library MSTU is still going to happen. So anything above and beyond that will have to be generated by new taxes.
Okay, well, correction there.
Yeah.
So what percentage of the county budget is paid for by ad valorem taxes at the county level?
The majority of it. No,
it's not. 27%. And you can calculate this. Go to the budget and look at this. 27% of the county's total budget of $660 million comes from ad valorem taxes. The vast majority of other funding comes from a lot of different sources.
No, I think you're looking at the wrong thing. You have to look at your general fund operating budget, and the vast majority of that comes from ad valorem taxes. We have a half penny that spends out about 32 million. We have franchise fees, and we get some state revenue sharing. But the vast majority, you're incorrect, Steve. The vast majority of our funding, of our general fund for our operations, comes from ad valorem.
So yes, I agree with you. When you consider just the general
That's
fund,
right. Believe me.
yes.
Trust me.
Yeah. And you're a numbers guy too. But you pointed out something interesting. You mentioned franchise fees.
Yes.
And you didn't mention this, but lumped in with that, communication service taxes.
Yep.
So when you draw lines of a municipality and incorporate, franchise fees and the communication service taxes actually become the municipal revenue source.
That's true.
One
That's
of
true.
many.
But I will, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I will say this. I spoke to Lynn Tipton, and that's true, but you have to negotiate those, and it doesn't happen automatically. In other words, the minute you're incorporated, you don't start getting that money. You got to go negotiate with.
Yes and no. It's partly a negotiation. It can also happen in the municipal charter. But so there, and I know we're running short on time. We want to get to that lightning round, but there's a lot of pieces to this.
Yes, there is. Yes.
That there's dozens of different revenue sources that all have different rules about what they can be spent on, what they can't be spent on, where they come from, how you qualify for them, all those kinds of things. The feasibility study, which is the state required process of going through and showing that this actually would be feasible, is what we're in the middle of. And it's the feasibility study firm's job to go through and do a 5-year projected budget on the general fund and show not only that you would be solvent the first year, but 5 years in that you are actually building a healthy reserve. Because if those numbers, excuse me, if those numbers came back and it didn't look like we would be able to build reserves, even I would say, like, this is a bad idea.
Right.
And that's what this whole process is really about. I know there's a lot of people with questions and concerns. That's great. We're a research organization. We're compiling these questions. We're going to smart people like Lynn Tipton with Florida League of Cities. We're talking to the Florida Department of Revenue, asking these questions to get them all answered so that they're answered before everybody in the feasibility study. And then that then goes to the state, gets vetted by everybody at the state level, and then comes back, and the local citizens look at it, debate it back and forth, and finally vote for themselves.
Sure.
And I'd love to point this out, because our feasibility study firm, the reason we chose them is not only that they've done 30 of these studies in the state of Florida, but also his favorite thing is watching the community on both sides of the argument take his study and argue their points using his source material. So it's that balance. Like, he tries to do, like, he's not recommending for or against, he's just presenting the facts, ma'am, and then the community can look at this and honestly go through. And at the end of the day, if we get through this whole process and we look through this feasibility study, even me personally, I don't know if we should incorporate yet. No one knows, because no one has asked these questions and done this deep of a study ever. But when this is all said and done, we'll be able to look at this and say, all right, does this make sense to do? Yes or no? Yeah. If we vote no, then we'll find some other way to deal with local issues. But
so when do you anticipate the feasibility? I think there's a lot of pent up anticipation.
Oh yeah.
When is that? When are we going to drop? When's that going to drop?
Okay, so the second to last week of August, we're working to nail down a date in that week for the feasibility study firm to come and present it to the public. And it would be published on our website at that point, and people can start to look through this, figure it out. Now, and then at that point, it would go to the state. So I'm as impatient as all of you. I start side research projects when I have to sit around and twiddle my thumbs. By the way, remind me later, that Pockets of Poverty map from 2015.
Yes, sir.
I know the Haas Center redid some of the numbers. I went through and redid it exactly as Studer Group had originally done it, so that you could see them side by side. So 2021 numbers versus whatever. Because I was bored and I was waiting for the feasibility study to get back, I'm like, I need something to do. So anyways, but interesting stuff in that too. So
it is. Well, I mean, we're quickly coming to a point where we have to wrap this up, but I appreciate you taking the tough questions, because I know anytime you try, look, I know better than a lot of people. Anytime you propose something new and different, you're going to take a lot of shots, and I'm trying to be very neutral. But there are some really directed questions that have to be answered. And I think in order to make an informed opinion, you have to do the research. So as I told you, I spoke with Lynn Tipton after I taken copious notes at your thing. And I said, well, how are they going to get the revenue? So I want you to respond to this. She said, in order to tap to the local option gas tax and tap into their portion of the half-cent sales tax, they have to raise the equivalent of 3 mills. Now, 3 mills on your rough tax roll of that study area is about 3.6 billion. It's a little over $10 million. And I said, well, Lynn, how in the world do they raise $10 million? And she said, they can do it one of 3 ways. You can do it with ad valorem tax rate increases. In other words, increase the millage rate. You can do it on new utility taxes on utility bills. And she said a lot of cities get a lot of revenue that way, or new fees and new taxes on current business owners. So there's only 3 ways to raise that money to get to where you need to be to tap into these other state monies. So I guess the $1 million question is, if the feasibility study says it's worth it to do it, if you get the vote to do it from the state legislature and then from the citizens, how much would the first year's budget be, or do you not know yet?
I don't know yet. In that feasibility study with the 5-year projected budget, in addition to that, one of the things that the firm is doing is identifying the mechanism that you're talking about for unlocking state shared revenues, those kinds of things, and explaining that in a lot more detail. If you want to get a sneak peek of what that looks like, I would suggest going on our website, and in the resources section, there is a feasibility study from Indiantown, Florida. Another good example would be Estero, Florida. If you look in their municipal charter, you can see some examples of how they went around to actually get access to the state shared revenues. So, but all of that will come out in the study. What that looks like exactly for us, that's up to the study firm to.
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I want to do a quick little lightning round. So you got to answer these quick. I know I'm the worst.
I'm ready.
I give these long-winded answers, and before you know it, 10 minutes have gone by. Does We Are Perdido support 4-laning Perdido Key Drive?
We don't have a position one way or the other. It's about a local voice, local choice, and a seat at the table for those kinds of discussions. So
the feasibility study was paid for by whom?
So far, it's 100% citizen donations, and we are probably about 15 to 20% into the total raise that we need to raise, and we're raising money starting now again for this process from local citizens.
Okay, I seriously want to know what issues Perdido has the rest of the county does not. We are experiencing growing pains and all need to work together. No more division of areas. I own as well in District 1 and have no issues with my taxes going to all areas for improvement. What issues does Perdido have that the rest of us do not?
Okay, so really quick, the county has a 20-year comp plan, right? Okay. The 20-year comp plan for the county is 110 pages for 320,000 people. An example comp plan for Fort Myers Beach, 6,000 people, is 550 pages that actually shows and guides development. The county's comp plan and land development code, has no offense to the county, but it was one of the last counties in the state to put together or to come in compliance with the state land development code, all that kind of stuff. And it's the bare minimum of what is necessary. So with a lot of the development issues that we're seeing around the county, overdevelopment or, unfunded infrastructure, different things like that, actually tie into a comp plan that isn't as expanded as it could be. It's hard to expand that at the county level. That would be one of the first things that a new town would have to do. Within the first 3 years, they have to come up with a 20-year comprehensive plan for Perdido to say, this is what we want our community to look like in 20 years and how we would get there.
Barbara asks this: a lot of us don't want to live in a city. That's why we are in the county. We don't buy in HOAs. We don't buy in cities. We don't want the extra oversight. We like the lives we have. What would you say to someone like that?
I grew up in the country. I completely understand, and we're not after a whole big city bureaucracy over us. That's not what we're over. We're trying to find ways to address local issues locally, and have a seat at the table in these discussions. So
this is from Jason. Steve, why should we ingest more unnecessary code and regulations?
If you like the way that development is happening around, then I guess you don't need to. But I think there's a lot of people in the community who look at storage units popping up everywhere, the apartments by the bridge, things that are happening and expanding and growing in the area at a kind of an uncontrollable rate. And they're seeing Perdido disappear before their eyes. And they don't want that to happen.
Okay, Mr. Pappas asks this: our Perdido Key area has a ton of traffic issues with our current roadways and warehouses going in. How will this improve?
So the seat at the table that a local government has, those different types of conversations, typically a municipality would have a seat and a vote at transportation planning organizations, things like that, and be able to work with other government entities and come up with intelligent traffic solutions that work.
Okay, interesting. Well, we're just about fresh out of time, but and there's a lot more questions. I'm not going to get to them, but hopefully folks got a flavor of it. Steve, tell us when your next planned meeting is so folks will know.
So we'll announce it soon, but it's going to be probably the second to last week of August, and we'll make sure we get it on our website. If you have questions, the community has been asking a lot of questions, and we put a searchable question database on our website where you can just start typing and find your question. If you don't find it, type it in the little ask a question live question box, and within a day or two we'll get back with an answer and put it on the website for everybody to see. So
that's a great idea. I like that idea. I want to thank you. I just want to put a plug in for a couple things going on out in that section of the county, because I'm still in charge. I guess I'll use that term.
Commissioner, we'll always have a commissioner. So.
Well, I mean, but that means I got to own all the problems. So we do have a traffic circle out there. I inherited the design for it. I inherited the funding for it, frankly, from my predecessor that had District 2 before the rezoning, before it went back to District 1. So I just want folks to know, I've had a lot of complaints about it. I understand how traffic circles work. I've been out there. I've driven through that traffic circle from Johnson's Beach Road, coming north and going south. I've had no issues with it. A lot of folks feel like it's not big enough. A lot of folks feel like it wasn't designed properly. Even the folks who supported it now are saying, well, I liked it before and I voted for it at a town hall, but now I don't like it. So
can I mention, come visit on Saturday morning, because that's check-in, check-out day.
Yeah, exactly. And then, check-in time at 3:00 during season, it's going to be packed. It's like your favorite restaurant. You can't build it big enough. You're going to wait 2 hours for a seat on Saturday night at 6. You just are. And so traffic circles are the same way. So here's what's going on right now, though. Our traffic engineering department has commissioned a study, and we're looking at it right now during the season. We're taking camera shots from above condos, and we're looking at the data because we found out, now this is kind of scandalous. I mean, but this is not a knock to current staff. This is back in 2018, that roadway belonged to the state. The commissioner at that time desperately wanted a roundabout there, as did some of the developers in the area. I'll just put it that way. Well, the state came back, did a thorough study. I have a copy of it now. I found it. I got it last week. That's how recently this is coming to me. But in that study in 2018, September 2018, they specifically recommended against a roundabout at that intersection. A year later, we did the property swap, which again, I supported for reasons that made sense for District 1 for Beulah. And then shortly thereafter, that commissioner at the same time pressed hard, got the roundabout funded, put in. So I don't know if staff at that time knew about the study the state had done. It's only gotten busier, so I can't imagine the roundabout idea got better. So we're looking into that. And what I've told people and what I intend to do to honor my word is whatever the study recommends as the best solution is what we're going to put there. Not something that a developer likes. He likes the idea of it, or if people kind of thought it would be kind of cool. Whatever works the best. The state spent a lot of money. They said, don't do a roundabout. The county turned around and did a roundabout. And they said, well, there was a community meeting and we did outreach. Well, someone that I really respect told me this very recently. He said, listen, 75 people in a room, you get 46 of them to say, yeah, I want the roundabout. But they ignore the technical analysis. You do that at great expense and great peril. Now, this is a guy I respect. I'm not going to name him, but I agree with him. Had I known about the study, let me just tell everyone, that roundabout wouldn't be there, because I would have said, we need to do a new study, because maybe we just need a big, long turn lane into Johnson's Beach and a signal there. Or maybe the best thing to do is do nothing. So anyway, I say all that to say, we're going to get that intersection figured out. We're going to do a town hall out in the late part of August out in Perdido area. We're going to do another town hall, and we're going to continue to open up beach access. We did a lot at that last meeting. Wes pointed out all the grants we got, the 23 million that we spent, but we also got 3.6 million voted by my counterparts for additional public beach access in Perdido. We're building a fire station in Perdido. We're doing a lot in Perdido. Steve, I would tell you this, and all your folks, if you need something from the county, call me.
Yeah.
I've only been in this district a year and a half. We're lighting it on fire. All you got to do is call me. If I can do it, if it's humanly possible to do it, I will do it. Or come to the meeting. So
hey, I've got two things I want to ask.
Okay.
Publicly.
Sure.
Can you check the timing on the lights, the stop lights on Sorrento Road?
Yes.
Because it seems like in the last month, something has changed with the timing, and it's weird traffic issues, or it'll open up for just like.
Are you talking about
seconds.
Sorrento at Innerarity? Right. Yeah.
Sorrento and Bauer, and then Sorrento and Innerarity. So the timing of those lights. And then the second thing that I would ask, these guys, Eric and Wes, they're amazing. Could you please give them another raise?
Well, they're going to get raised. They get raises when the employees get raises. And I think that's the fair way to do it. But I'll tell you what that means though, Steve, in the lean years when we can't give raises, that means they don't get them either. Right. And that, am I right, guys? I mean, that's the way that works. So, you know, so absolutely. And
great job, guys.
No, thank you guys. And I apologize. We went 5 minutes long, but Steve, I appreciate you being here and answering the questions. I threw some tough ones at you. I appreciate you answering them. Eric and Wes, as usual, thanks for getting up and being a part of this. I greatly appreciate what you guys do. Thank you. And to everyone who watched this morning, have a great rest of the week. Have a great weekend.